You know what this is right here? This is a full-blown, full-powered, extremely small form factor computer sent to us by Falcon Northwest. We're gonna take a look at it today. We're gonna do some temperature testing. So that's what I care most about this, because you will not believe the amount of hardware that is packed into something that is smaller than a PS5. Achieve cable mod nirvana with cable mod's 12-volt high-power angled adapters. These low-profile adapters plug into your graphics card's 16-pin 12-volt high-power port and enable the power cable to be plugged in at either a 90-degree or 180-degree angle. Featuring a multi-PCB design and a sleek profile, this adapter helps increase clearance between the GPU and the side panel, perfect for today's wide GPUs, and is available in a wide range of colors, allowing for a perfect match with your custom color profiles. To learn more, follow the link in the description below. All right, so if you guys don't know what Falcon Northwest is, they're probably one of the oldest SIs still around. But what I love about the Falcon Northwest is the president and founder, Kelt, he designs the chassis himself, and then they get mass machined and produced based on his specs and his designs. A lot of SIs basically just take off-the-counter products like cases and stuff from different ODMs or OEMs, maybe have a special label made, like a logo to replace whatever one might already be on there, put parts in it, based on what you select, and call it an SI, and then you get a warranty and all that sort of stuff. But the difference is very few SIs actually design, manufacture, and take on the production and R&D cost of creating chassis. And that's why I'm super excited about this. We've had a lot of conversation about the design aspects that went into that. But first I want to see what the accessories are that come with it. Just about every Falcon Northwest PC we've ever received, whether it be laptop, we did actually have the Frag Box, which is another small form factor PC, but this is like even half the volume of that. But they've all come with like a t-shirt and like a mug and coffee, and because, you know, why not? It's all about the customer experience at that point. So in here, what is this? So this is just it's got a little note on here from Kelt. It says, Jay, an unfinished tiki base. Thought it might look good. A good prop to show. Yeah, exactly. So this is an example. Jeez.
Dude, that's real best car.
This sucker is thick. So anyway, this is the base. It's an unfinished base. It's not anodized or any of the, and this is, I don't know what the grade of aluminum is. This sucker is chunky, just like me. Okay, so this, based on the weight, is gonna be probably the mug and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, so here's the mug. Like I said, every build comes with a little thank you card and a mug from Kelt, who's, like I said, the president and founder of the company. They're based out of Oregon, I believe. Stay. Coffee grinds, tumbler top. Oh, must be a top for the mug. Yeah, it's a top for the mug. And then we've got our extras and stuff. So what you get in here, which is actually pretty important, this is gonna be all like your warranty information and stuff. So you get this folder, you open it up. It's kind of like a setup guide, and it's tailored to whichever product it is that you get. So this is based on desktop system. It's got all the specs on it. It's got the results of like their Q&A check. Check this out. I mean, they go through a pretty significant amount of testing too. And they email you along the way. So you don't have to ask, because they'll just automatically tell you. These are just extra PSU cables. Every PSU comes with more cables than you need. If you ever wanted to expand it, in this case, probably not really very expandable, except maybe like an M.2 slot or two. But if it were a full-size tower, which they also sell, these extra cables would come in handy. Clearly it has an ASUS board. This is that magnetic ASUS antenna. This is the GPU support bracket that comes with the ProArt. This is gonna be a ProArt 4080, I believe. So it is a ASUS GPU and motherboard. So this has the T700 Crucial PCIe Gen 5 in there, and this is the heatsink that it would normally come with. Obviously they took the N.2 or M.2 out because it's on the motherboard, but this is the heatsink. So they even give you back all that. This USB drive contains a complete image of this system as we shipped it from the factory. So if you ever needed to revert back to factory, this is a recovery drive. Pretty cool to have. Just all the other accessories and stuff you would expect to come with your motherboard and all that. A bracket, which is clearly specific to this chassis. Not sure where it goes. Enough all that, and I think this card is pretty cool. This looks like an old school, like 90s like spy film where you have to jack the card and then and you get access into like the area. That's what this reminds me of. Now it's all like retina scanned and crap. In terms of performance, it's gonna perform like, I believe a 13900K is in here. And then RTX 4080, as long as the temperatures can stay within check. If the temperatures get too high, then you know it starts to throttle itself. And that's gonna be true for any freaking size case. All right, so in here, you can get an idea of the chassis and the airflow. Now, we'll take a look at it, but you can see the graphics card is in a vertical position at the top, and it has vents that line up perfectly with the 4080 ProArt that has flow through and top exhaust. So the 4080, as you know, has 3 fans, some of the air exhaust out the top and some of it flows through the rear, because like ever since the 30 series, flow throughs become a thing. The chassis is designed specifically for fans to blow on the graphics card and just be a straight flow through design the entire chassis. Here is the finished product. So here's the finished like bead blasted and anodized base, which is this guy right here. It's got little felt feet on there. So if you have it on your desk and you're sliding it around, it's not gonna be causing scratches. And this is the level of detail that I absolutely love about Falcon Northwest. The very first thing that caught my attention is this vent right here. And I did not have like a meeting with them to go over every little detail. This is just, their design really is kind of just intentional and in your face and makes sense. Do you notice what is on the other side of that right there? That is the backside of the socket for the CPU. So although there's no fan there exhausting air, instead of having a sealed off piece right there that can cause that area to get hot because of the fact that the back of the CPU socket gets hot as well, instead of radiating that heat against the chassis and then having that heat bounce back or reflect, it's a vent right there to allow that heat to just sort of passively escape or radiate out of the case. So little things like that. And I have no doubt that's because at some point they probably did thermal testing. So they provided us images of what this chassis looks like under load with a thermal camera. Now we do have a thermal camera, it's not a great one. I've actually ordered a new one to come that's a handheld FLIR so we can get nice footage of what stuff looks like. But anyway, I bet you anything they saw a hot spot right here. And he went, let's just ventilate that area right there. Here are 2 120mm intakes blowing directly on the graphics card. The rear exhaust shape even matches the flow through of the card. There's the amount of ventilation you can see on the top. And I said that this was probably a CPU cooler. It's not, I'm dumb, that's the power supply. Power supply's in the front. Let's open it up. So we've got thumb screws. Are they captive? Oh, they're not only they're captive, they're spring loaded. That's nice to see. So that means this guy should just, so it's an AIO, as you can see. The tubes like kind of pushed it off, but that's okay. It's an AIO, it's an Asetek AIO, as you can see. Now here's my only slight concern is that if this is a 13900K, a single 120 AIO is gonna have its work cut out for it. I'm wondering if it's a 13900 or a 13700. It's neither, it's a 7800 X3D. It's still gonna have its work cut out for it with a 120. You can see right there, here's the flow through vents where it comes through. You know what I just realized? This is a rather standard size graphics card, which is kind of nice. Because I was wondering like, how are you gonna fit a Strix or something in there? But you can't. How do we open the other side? We don't. That is a single piece of folded steel. So that piece comes up and then it gets press braked or bent into this angle. So everything gets worked on from this position, which makes a lot of sense because your motherboard is right there. Your power supply, which by the way, is an SFX power supply, is right here. Here's your toggle switch. Make sure that's on. And then here's your graphics card. So everything gets installed from this position. It's not like you need the other access to the other side. Now there are 2 120mm fans on the outside blowing directly onto the graphics card. They also have this riser cable. So this is a solid PCB riser right there, and then this is very short, right into the slot. Technically the motherboard is upside down to put the PCIe slot closest to the GPU. So this is probably proprietary and specific to their design. Otherwise, a standard riser cable would end up being far, far too long. So the overall design seems very well thought out. Now this bracket right here looks to me like it also doubles as a place to mount another drive. We also have wires kind of coming up through here. So here's our 12-volt power cable. So this is clearly going to be a PCIe Gen 5/ATX 3.0 SFX power supply. So this is a direct cable. So the 12 volt power plug is coming up and doing a 180 bend coming back. However, it is very well seated. It's not touching the top. There's a lot of relief and slack, so it's not yanking on the cable. RTX 4080s also haven't been having the melting issue. Speaking of melting, time for me to put the side panel back on, put this thing under some gaming load, and keep an eye on the temps and see what happens.
I don't think this monitor's big enough.
It's only 55.
Yeah.
No, it's a 50. I think no, maybe it's a 55. I don't remember. It's a pleb TV. It's old.
Sucks.
All right, so I've had, this is Speedway, which is an RTX, basically a benchmark, and you can put it in loop mode. So I've had it running loop now for at least 20 minutes. It is all factory fan settings for the graphics card, and I have not adjusted any of the fan profiles that are on this system. Now, because it's an ASUS system, it is using Armory Crate for its fan profiles and its LEDs. Now, the only LEDs that are on this are the RAM, which by the way, it's 64 gigabytes of 6,000 megahertz RAM. It's got more RAM and it's running at 6,000 megahertz, which I can't get mine to do at home on my 7950X3D. So that makes me sad. But anyway, it's got twice the memory too. I'm running 32 gigs, it has 64. It also has a 2 terabyte Gen 5 Crucial 700 SSD, like I already said. So it's got some pretty significant stats. But anyway, it's been running now for a while. Armory Crate is how you control the lighting, which you can change the color of the Falcon on the front. You can change the color of the RAM and the motherboard lights, but you can't really see them anyway. So just the Falcon on the front, which right now is just set to white. That's also where you would change your fan profiles if you wanted to. Now I wouldn't go in there and adjust too much, but right now, Falcon really has this set in an optimized thermals and acoustic setting. So if you are like, look, I've got a kind of a noisy environment, I play with headphones, I don't mind having more noise, you can crank up those fans. That's kind of how I do it at home. My fans run high on my system because I would prefer max cooling over max comfort in acoustics. But without touching anything, the RTX 4080 ProArt is running at 65C in 4K, by the way. This is a 4K rescaled benchmark. Typically it runs in 1440p. It is running 4K right now, and it's at 65C. Now you can see that chart. This little bump right here, this is for a moment where I decided to overclock it, and obviously there is gonna be a temperature bump when you overclock because I increased the power limit and stuff, but it's running at 2685 megahertz, so it seems to hover right around the 2670 to 2700 mark. And if I go ahead and just like give it more temperature and power priority, you'll see the temps will kind of instantly climb. It's either 67, but look, we get some frequency back. Not a lot of it, but we get some. So in this environment right now, where our studio is sitting at a comfortable 70 degrees Fahrenheit, which is this number in Celsius, the system is having no problems keeping things cool at all. And as you can see, we put a PS5 behind it just so you can have sort of a size comparison to the unit. So it's a little longer than the PS5, it's taller, it's about the same width overall if you consider the base of the PS5, but you have a 4080, and you have a 7800 X3D, and you have 64 gigabytes of 6,000 megahertz RAM, and you have 2 terabytes worth of SSD that you don't have to buy extra to throw inside one of these. But anyway, so that's that. I just wanna see now how much overclocking we can get, and check this out, the fan profile, it's at 54% right now, 67C with the power limit maxed. I'm gonna add like 150 megahertz to the core. So there's 2895, 2880. What if I go 200? Will it go 200 and not crash? 3000 megahertz is the number where it starts to get a little difficult for 40 series if you're not on water. I mean, we do have cool air blowing directly on the graphics card. Nope, it did not like the plus 250 offset. So I'm gonna go back to the 220. But here's another thing I want to point out. Look how fast it's cooling down. It's at 30%. This is fan speed percent right now, by the way. 30%, 43C. Now here's the thing. This card does use 0 RPM mode. That's 0 dB/0 RPM. So when the card is not under load, if it was sitting in a desktop or whatever, it would be at 0 RPM and probably idle in the mid 40s. But because we have 2 120 millimeter fans blowing on the heatsink without its fans moving, it was actually idling when I started the system under 30 degrees Celsius. And that's obviously at 0 noise. So if you're doing things that are not putting it in 3D mode that's gonna utilize the cores, browsing the internet, if you have a hardware accelerated browser or any sort of other software, until it really starts to get up there in temperature, like in the 50s, the fans aren't gonna really kick on. So check that out. It's at 37C right now, and you can see the fan percent is at 0. 36C, it's starting to drop because these fans are still blowing on it. The card is drawing about 300 to 330 watts, depending. Our max draw was 351, but our CPU temperature technically hit 80C for a moment. That's when we're loading the test. But the CPU is completely unaffected by the GPU because it's separated up here. This is GPU and CPU is down here. Remember, the CPU has the 120mm fan and AIO on the other side that's directly cooling it. Now, I still think even for a 7800X3D, that a 120mm AIO is like on the bare minimum spec. But I trust Falcon Northwest that they've done enough cooling testing, enough thermal testing, and using thermal imaging to make sure that it is adequate to be able to give you at least out-of-the-box performance of a 7800X3D. Now, overclocking X3D CPUs is not even really technically supported and or recommended by AMD. This is not even running the offset. So there is an offset that you can set to each core on an X3D CPU. Ryzen Master is not even installed on this system. So it is just plopped in, out of the box, that's it. One thing we know about X3D, it is allowed to and wants to go to its max safe temperature. That gives you max performance. I think most of us, myself included, is very stuck in it needs to be as cool as possible, which is not a bad thing, but I mean, there is a reason why there is a TJ Max. That thermal junction max is the max temperature that the CPU's lifespan is rated at. So if it's expected to run 10 years, it could run at that temperature for 10 years. That's the idea behind it. I'm gonna go ahead and run Cinebench on here because I'm just curious now if the 7800X3D absolutely can and will run with a 120 AIO just fine. So we're at 5,000 megahertz, 49, 48. Immediately to 87C, 88C. Oh, 87, we're at 4,800 megahertz all core. I forget how good the AMD AM5 CPUs are at maintaining clock while at max speed. Or max temp, I mean. And we're gaining some clock back, 4825. So that was an 18,125. I need to compare these results with other results online. So Guru 3D has theirs listed at 18,193, 18,125. So absolutely within range of where it's expected. Let's run it again. If we really wanted to stress this, we would put it on a loop and just let it go and go and go and go. Because you know the AIO will take a little bit of time to saturate its heat fully. See, now it's at 4725, 4750, 4675, 48, 47, 48. It's kind of hard to see, but if you look here, when it stabilized, it was solid. Whereas this time it's a little like, and then it stabilized. So that might give us a little bit lower score. I'm guessing maybe a 17.9 something, just because of that clock difference in the beginning. 18,082, 18,082, okay. For a 120 AIO, just a basic Asetek. But you know what though? If you think about it, a 120 AIO should be able to handle 85 watts of power, no problem. So that's impressive. One last thing, I'm gonna open up Armory Crate because I wanna see what the fan curve looks like on here and if they've even adjusted it at all. I doubt it. This is probably out of the box if you wanna know the truth. They're currently running at, okay, so these are the chassis fans right here. They're running full speed. They're only maybe 1100 RPM fans are running at 1040. So they were blowing 100% on the GPU the entire time. Now there's a trade-off here. That means this is as much performance as we can throw at the GPU in terms of air cooling. So unless you wanted to take it apart and throw some high RPM fans in there, and I think RGB fans would look kind of cool right there, I'm just saying. It's just me though, I'm an RGB slut. So the only way you'd get more performance now in that upper chassis is to throw in different fans. But this is a fair trade-off. And then the CPU fan, there's our curve right there. So look at that. It does not go above 60% until it hits 65C, and then it goes 100% at 75. That's the noise level with it. Can you even hear it? It's like, Falcon Northwest sort of hits it out of the park again. This is the difference of when you have an enthusiast that owns the company designing stuff for their brand and not just going, what ODM has something available that we can buy and then just reuse and mark up and cost money. Anyway, I would leave it at the stock fan curves. There's no reason to adjust them. Even the GPU didn't even benefit from it really. The max it got was to like 59C on the fan speed. There you go guys. I'll put a link to Falcon Northwest down in the description. If you guys have never heard of them, trust me, they are an OG. They've been around for a long, if you ever had PC Gamer magazine back in like the 90s or the early 2000s, you've seen their ads. They have been around a long, long time. They are not your fly by night, I'm gonna start a PC building company and I'm just gonna buy parts from Micro Center and then put it together and sell it as an SI. This is true engineering from the ground up. All right guys, thanks for watching. As always, we'll see you in the next one. And of course, thank you Falcon for letting us take a look at this guy.